Hey guys, it's Saturday, and it's time for another edition of the Breakfast Club. Yeah, my Christmas tree is still up. Shut up! I'll get rid of it soon. It's been busy, okay? Anyway, um, I just finished cleaning this. It's a sword. I mean, that's why I got the title, the name I picked. To I collect swords, I practice with them, and you gotta keep them clean and oiled and stuff. And I just finished that with this one. This particular piece, which is one of my personal favorites, is one of the first real ones I'd ever gotten. It's a Chinese straight sword called a dian. In China, generally, you see two types of swords. You have the curved ones with the wider blade, and they're called dou in Chinese. And they see those as knives, interestingly enough. They're single-edged, and single-edged weapons are generally called knives. Well, this one, which is double-edged, they call a sword. The word jian in Chinese. And this particular piece is based on the type that was made during the Han Dynasty. In fact, this is generally called a Han Jian, or a Han Dynasty sword. And these particular swords back then, during the Han Dynasty, which is one of the earlier periods of Chinese history, these were primarily used for war. I mean, that's what they gave their soldiers. That's what the kings used on the battlefield. This particular thing. Well, not this particular thing, but, stuff that looked like this. These were war tools. These were combat tools. And that shouldn't really be too surprising to you guys. I mean, that's what swords are for, right? They're generally used to defend yourself and hurt the other guy, right? Funny thing, though. In China, while, yes, they know that that's what the sword is for, the actual, qualities of a sword, the symbols that they've put on this weapon, the symbolizations, the things that it's supposed to represent, they've kind of changed. This shouldn't be too surprising because we kind of did the same thing here in Western culture. While, here in the West, when we think of swords, we think of knights or musketeers or, bandits or whatever. We know swords to be combat tools in our own culture as well. But we've also given, certain attributes to the sword that, kind of go beyond its primary use as a tool of combat and warfare. Swords, now have this kind of symbol of nobility, of, character, of gentleman, of the refined individual, of the hero. We've elevated swords to that extent where, you got the dashing hero or, the refined individual who carries a sword on his waist, and it's supposed to be a symbol of, their authority, but also their nobility, and they, pull their weapon out to defend the weak and fight evil and things like that. And in China, they've done the same thing, but they've gone beyond that. It's become even more than that. And I find this interesting. This used to be a battlefield weapon, like I said, during the Han Dynasty. But by the time you reach the Song Dynasty, this is no longer a battlefield weapon. The main battlefield weapon is the dou, the single-edged sword, the curved one. And it pretty much remained that way all the way till the end of the Qing Dynasty before, guns became, the main thing to use on the battlefield. Even though, to be honest, the dou continued to be used all the way through World War II, but this is not a history lesson on weapons, believe it or not. But yeah, this had been supplanted by the curved sword, by the saber, long time ago. And yet, we still see martial artists practicing with these weapons. And we still see these weapons hung in people's homes in China. And you see Taoist priests doing their rituals with it or practicing their own sword arts with it. So it's kind of funny, isn't it? That something that used to be the main battlefield weapon for only a short period of time is still firmly cemented in the minds of Chinese people. Because it became more than just a symbol of war. It also became a symbol of nobility. It became a symbol of authority. It it was a symbol of authority even back during the Han Dynasty, when for a short period of time they were the only people allowed to carry these, or at least for a certain length. This is pretty long. It's kind of funny that they had long ones, but they also had shorter ones. Whatever. I don't want to get, again, this is not supposed to be a history lesson. But this transformed, especially when it started becoming more of a civilian weapon. When it no longer was the main weapon on the battlefield, but civilians picked it up for their own personal self-defense. And people were also wearing these as a fashion statement, or as a statement, it was a last bit of decoration. And it was worn by people who wanted to show how refined they were. And they also took on the characteristics of learning it and using it as a symbol of what they considered to be the highest form of their Chineseness. It was supposed to represent somebody who was educated, who was either enlightened or on that path of enlightenment. Again, using the term refined, they have a high, level of moral character. And then even in the hands of earlier shamans and later Taoist priests, began to be used as a symbol to ward off evil. Which I guess is not too much of a stretch. I mean, first you're using it as a combat tool to defend yourself against mortal threats. Why not, in the hands of somebody who dealt with supernatural forces, use it against, spiritual threats as well, right? But yeah, it became a symbol to ward off evil and to complete rituals with. And it got to the point where this has now become this ultimate symbol of, chivalry, of, moral righteousness, of a good character, of what it means to be a good citizen in the country that they live in. So why am I bothering to mention all this? Well, it's kind of interesting to me how human beings can take something that is more or less mundane, or maybe even, and some may consider negative, just a tool for combat, and turn it into something more than what it is. They can turn it into something more meaningful in their lives. Something that would end up being a collective symbol for not, just an individual or two, but for the entire culture, the whole country. And hopefully turn that into a symbol for good, or for a symbol for, something to attain to. A moral that they're supposed to reach, or a certain state of being that they aspire to get at, to become. It's no longer just a physical object. It's no longer just a tool for the practical purpose of keeping you alive. It's now a symbol of something to strive towards. And it's gained more meaning that way. This is not something that's unique to the Chinese. Human beings in general do this all the time. We will take something, and throughout the years, that thing becomes more than what it is. We elevate it to the state of being a symbol for something. And that symbol could be positive or negative. Here I chose to pick a more positive example. There are negative ones too. And sometimes symbols themselves can morph and change. You can have a symbol that meant something positive, and in the wrong hands becomes negative, and that negativity can be almost impossible to shake off. The swastika comes to mind, for instance. But I find that rather interesting, that human beings do this all the time. Not just culturally, but even in our private lives, there may be something that, we use every day that becomes a symbol for something. That we can personally use in a positive or negative way, and then use that to propel our lives forward. It could be something as simple as a marble, or a coin, or a knife, or a bottle. Things that we use every day or encounter all the time that are just mundane objects. But through life experiences or through cultural development, they can become something much, much more that could actually enrich our lives. I find that fascinating, to be honest. And it makes me want to think of modern examples of this. We focus a lot on the stuff that we transformed from the past. because it's the easiest to find. You can look in the past and realize, oh, they're using it like this, and we're seeing it like this now. It's easy to do that when you have so many years behind it to go back and compare with. But I am sure that we're doing this in our present period as well. And I'm sure you guys can do a better job of coming up with examples than I can, because right now I'm kind of just have to work. But yeah, I'm sure you can think of, at least in your private lives, something mundane that means something else in your own life that becomes a symbol of moving forward. My own personal example would be cards. That might be a video for another time. But just regular playing cards has become something more than just small, thin pieces of cardboard. And I guess that's what I would like you to leave off on. The modern symbols in our lives. How we can transform something mundane, or even negative, into something positive. Into something that can be a symbol for something that we can reach towards, either personally or collectively, to improve ourselves and the lives around us. Something to aspire to. Yep. That's about it. Wanted to make sure this was a positive video after the last one I did. So, catch you guys later.